Next, we are going to be hearing from Jeffrey Proctor and Jonathan Chi of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, or LAHSA, and Tonja Boykin of the Weingart Center. I'm going to do a quick intro on our speakers. Jeffrey Proctor is an Associate Director of Performance Management with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. As Director, Jeff is responsible for the oversight of LAHSA's program development and coordinates with funders, service providers, and other stakeholders to strengthen and advance the LA continuum of care for individuals experiencing or at risk of homelessness in the city and county of LA. Jeff is joined by Jonathan Chi, Associate Director of Performance Management at LAHSA. Jonathan is a social worker that has been working with populations experiencing homelessness for a little over a decade, and starting in 2008, working at the largest homeless shelter in Salt Lake City, Utah. Jonathan oversees the program performance of community-based organizations and quality program standards. And lastly, they are joined by Tonja Boykin, Chief Operating Officer at the Weingart Center. Tonja is a skilled strategist with over 30 years of nonprofit management. She is a recognized leader in community organizing, program development, and strategic initiatives focused on the hardest to serve populations, including those experiencing homelessness and those at risk. So without further ado, let's hear from our experts. Welcome.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Anne and Christine and everyone with My Dog Is My Home and everyone for having us on today to speak with you all about animal accommodations within the LA County Coordinated Entry System. I appreciate the introduction. I'll quickly go through the agenda here. So today what we'll be talking about is some background on the LA County Homeless Initiative and some of its funding strategies, essentially what lays the foundation for much of the funding for services and program across the county. And then from there, we'll get into some of the specific programming elements we've been able to implement through the administration of Measure H funds. And then we'll have Tonja from the Weingart. She'll be talking about some of the specific programming and services that they have been able to implement in a few of their interim housing facilities that are, really good examples of pet-friendly, animal-friendly programming. And then we'll get into some of LAHSA and our coordinated entry system policies around animal accommodations, policies for service animals, emotional support animals, and companion animals. And then we'll talk about how we oversee and monitor those policies there. Just further introduction and background about who we all are in the kickoff from Carol. Jonathan and myself were introduced from being from the LA Homeless Services Authority. LAHSA, the LA Homeless Services Authority, we are a joint powers authority of the city and county of Los Angeles. We were formed in 1993 to serve as the lead agency for the city and county for the administration of city and county public funds for the coordination, development, design, implementation, and management of homeless services across the county. And we also serve as the lead agency for the LA County continuum of care. And how about Tonja, do you want to do an introduction about the Weingart?
Sure, thank you. So the Weingart Center is a 35-year-old interim housing facility. We are located in the heart of Skid Row. We believe that every individual has and needs the tools necessary to be stable, find permanent housing, and move forward with their life. We provide a multitude of services, everything from wraparound case management to job development, housing navigation services, physical and mental health, as well as educational services.
Great, thank you, Tonja. So I mentioned, in the agenda and the intro, that we would talk a little bit about some of the elements that have sort of laid the foundation for our funding landscape. For some of the attendees, I'm sure you may be familiar with our County Measure H ballot initiative, but for those who are not familiar, in 2015, the County of Los Angeles created and implemented the homeless initiative, which that initiative was pulled together to come up with a series of policy recommendations that the county would then seek to pursue in response to the growing homelessness crisis across the county of Los Angeles. To support the implementation of those policy recommendations, a ballot initiative was prepared, and voters approved that initiative in the spring of 2017. to create a 1/4-cent sales tax across the county, and that sales tax would be used solely for the purposes of supporting and enhancing programs and services to help end homelessness in the county of Los Angeles. With that ballot initiative and the funding that is authorized and directed through it, LAHSA serves, the LA Homeless Services Authority serves as one of the primary administrators of that funding. The homeless initiatives included at the time, I think, 47 different strategies. And one of those strategies, the primary strategy for interim housing and emergency shelter, is the county's E8 strategy. That's titled Enhance the Emergency Shelter System. And that strategy was designed to really refine, enhance, and improve emergency shelter and interim housing across the county, to create low barrier programming, reduce barriers to entry, reduce barriers to participation, improve the quality of services. And one of the recommendations is also to increase the shelter system's capacity to serve persons with service animals, emotional support animals, and companion animals. So after the strategies were created as policy recommendations, then the county held a series of policy summits to get community feedback on what implementation would look like. Having adopted these as sort of policy recommendations, like how do we actually want to go about designing and implementing these recommendations. And these input sessions were held across the county. Feedback included partners from the homeless service provider community, elected offices, county departments, and persons with lived experience. And some of the feedback that specifically got brought up in those policy summits was a need for funding to be provided to the emergency shelter system, specifically to support the costs of persons with their animals. And some of the items that had been requested to be funded were additional hygiene services, kennels for animals, and funding for food and supplies for animals in shelter. So in response to those policy summits, in the 2017 Measure H funding recommendation, through those funding recommendations, $150,000 had been set aside specifically to increase capacity to serve persons with animals in our interim housing system. LAHSA had released that funding through an RFB, a request for bids, and we designed the RFP to be pretty flexible, because we wanted to see what the needs were and how best to put some funding out into the provider community, and then see how we could address the needs that they were seeing in their facility. So some of the funds that have been requested was funds for capital costs to create dog runs and dog parks, to do staff training, to do licensing of animals, to pay for supplies, and also to do training for the animals themselves. And then to support the implementation of the funding through the release of the RFP, we held a series of trainings and meetings with our grantees. There was a program kickoff to provide some training and onboarding for our providers, and then we would hold what we call learning communities, but those are essentially peer learning cohorts of service providers, where providers get together in meetings facilitated by LAHSA to discuss the challenges and opportunities and successes and things like that. After we had released those funds through the RFP, basically the feedback that we had received was that the ability to have pet-friendly and animal-friendly accommodations in our shelter system was such that we need to expand and enhance this element in more of our programming. And one of the ways in which that was done was through the city's A Bridge Home initiative. In the spring of 2018, the city passed a package of ordinances and also declared a shelter crisis, and that the combination of that shelter crisis declaration and those ordinances allowed the city to expedite the opening of shelters within the city of Los Angeles. It allowed the city to bypass or get exemptions on a number of land use and zoning restrictions, and also allowed the city access to state funding to help with covering the costs of capital services to create and build these shelters. So After those ordinances were passed and after the declaration was released, LAHSA then worked with the mayor's office and city departments and our service providers to coordinate on the design of each of the shelters that the city would then open. And through these, planning and design sessions, LAHSA and the city and the service providers uniformly recommended that there was going to be a need for animal-friendly design at each of the facilities, and that each of those facilities, a number of them, will include things like dog runs and dog parks, as well as spaces for persons to kennel their animals if needed. And we'll jump on to the Weingart Center now. Tonja.
Thank you. So first I want to say thank you for allowing me to meet with all of you today. This was really exciting for us. Prior to all the things that Jeff has talked about, the Weingart Center was already very dog friendly. We knew that we wanted to ensure that clients didn't have barriers to coming in, and it shouldn't be because of their pets. So in 2018, when LAHSA put out the request for bids, we were excited. We had already created a number of policies, but we really did lack substantial funding to move forward in ways that we would really want to. And so the creation of that request for bids was really great for us. Weingart did apply, and we received a grant of $15,000. And with that $15,000, we primarily originally thought that we would really focus on supplies, flea meds, crates, things like that we saw that our clients needed. But after we did a survey with our clients and we looked at the needs in our facility, to back up a little bit, we are our main facility is a 623 bed facility, individual and single rooms with a few dorms. And so we were seeing clients that would have pets in their rooms. If they got sick or needed to leave for some reason, they didn't have the means or the ability to have someone watch their pets. They needed training as it related to how to deal with disciplinary issues with the pet and training. And we just really felt that given the external environment, which we're located in Skid Row, didn't provide a safe place for our clients to walk their dogs, or, for dogs just to be out. There's a lot of debris and trash in the area. So we put our heads together and we thought that we would take that $15,000 and we'd leverage it. And to our surprise, the first shot you see in the corner with the gorgeous dog paintings and the little gated area, we decided to build a dog park. And so with $15,000, we went out and talked to many of the partners that have participated in this conference and found out that we could actually get training resources that were free and folks were willing to come in and do, get supplies, quite frankly, through a multitude of providers for our clients. And then we decided to build the dog park. And the most exciting part of that was we were really impressed with the external community, not just homeless service providers and those who are focused on dogs, but architects and planners. And so this beautiful dog park that you see literally was put together by folks who lived in the Los Angeles area. Gensler supported this project. A number of local artists who built the fencing supported it, all agreeing that the most important thing was to provide not only the training and the materials needed for our clients with their pets, but the ability for them to have a safe space in order to enjoy their pets, to just have that experience. So we were really excited about that. At that space, through those leveraged partnerships, we currently provide on a monthly basis ongoing trainings. We have a mobile vet that comes out to meet with our clients. We'll do one-on-one training for discipline issues. All of this is with the goal that when our clients leave the Weingart Center, they are prepared to work with their pets in a way in permanent housing that doesn't create issues for them and their tenancy wherever they wherever they live. So that is an ongoing project. As a matter of fact, last weekend in our parking lot with social distancing guidelines, we had a huge pet clinic, not only open to the residents of the Weingart Center, but into the entire Skid Row community. And we find that more of these types of spaces in the community are necessary. Our Gardner site, where you see one of our lovely clients with her dog, which is in a bridge home site that Jeff mentioned, was a little bit different because it didn't allow, the site design didn't allow for space for an actual dog park. And so there, we really focused on the services inside. The Gardner Library is an all women's facility. It's 30 beds. It's a smaller spot. We still accommodate all animals, but in that setting, we really focused on how clients could be in a shelter type bridge home situation, still have their pets, learn how to work with them in a community that was in closer proximity. So we do monthly trainings with our clients and their pets on site with all the same services we provide at the Weingart Center. LAHSA has been amazing in that effort. They've provided for us the kennels and crates that are needed for the dogs, bedding that's needed. They regularly check in on flea meds and the types of things we need. And so that's also a very special project. Our last project, which is the Civic Center, a bridge home site, we were really happy to see that as part of the design, LAHSA and city leaders put the dog park in, which is just a great space and a way to do housing for interim and shelters going forward, because it really does remove that barrier for folks, especially in a bridge home setting, which are resistant to go into an interim housing setting or any of the room key sites or home key sites that are being done, because they're really concerned about losing their pets. Even though we tell our clients that's not going to happen, folks have experienced that out in the world. So it really is about building that trust. So when they walk up to the Civic Center site and see the dog park right in front on the mall, the Los Angeles Mall between City Hall and Parker Center, it just really helps them relax. We do all the same services that we provide at our main facility. And the other great thing about this is once a month, we have all of our sites come together, which creates some socialization for not just the dogs, but our clients, as the ultimate goal being that they will transition into a permanent setting where they'll need to work with their neighbors, dogs and others, in order to stay successfully housed. So that's some of the ways that we've really leveraged this program, and it is now a part of our work. We were absolutely thrilled. Our board and leadership are all dog people. I'm a 30-year dog owner, not the same dog for 30 years. That would be amazing, but I've had pets my whole life. And, you know, we really could not imagine, and I think none of us could, making a decision whether to be housed or to get rid of their pet. The two are interrelated. And so we're thrilled that this is happening and that you're putting on a conference to share the lessons learned.
Thank you for that, Tonja, and we absolutely greatly appreciate the partnership. So we're going to move on to looking at some of our CES policies and implementation, our LAHSA policy implementations, and some program oversights. Starting with our CES policies and implementations, we're going to briefly cover our interim housing minimum service and operations practice standards that were adopted by our CES Policy Council in 2019. You're going to find a regular theme of facility standards and inspections and countywide grievance coordination support, a part of pretty much all of our policies. LAHSA also has some program standards that are specific to our service animals, including our policies and again, facilities. And then for our program oversight, we'll do a brief overview of our ADA self-evaluation plans, as well as how our countywide grievance and facility inspections sort of impact the implementation of the work that we're trying to do. So as I'd mentioned in 2019, the CES Policy Council did adopt our interim housing minimum service and operations practice standards. That's a lot of words. But LAHSA, in collaboration with LA County Health Agency, developed a system-wide minimum service and practice standard for all of our interim housing programs. So essentially at that time, there were multiple shelters that were funded by multiple funders and different system leaders. And it came to a point to where we all got together and essentially needed to decide upon a core standard of service and what we think that ideal baseline should be. And so there was comprehensive work done with the LA County Health Agency on establishing it so that we could have, across how we fund our system, more uniform standards and services. And so that as participants are coming through our programs, there's not huge changes necessarily between what their experiences are or what their environment is. Within these practice standards, there's an emphasis on how programs shall accept all eligible participants with service animals per ADA and must provide reasonable accommodations for emotional support animals. I would add in real quick there, as Tonja had mentioned, these are policies more around our assistance support animals, but clearly a lot of our providers have taken it upon themselves, and they openly accept pets and have been working with those folks as well. Within this standard, of course, we have reasonable accommodation modification under Title II of the ADA, which is a really important piece to how we support our participants with disabilities, in particular in relation to our assistance animals. And then, of course, within this standard, there are facility-based standards that also include requirements for assistance animals. And most importantly, at least from my lens, we've also created a centralized countywide grievance coordination and support setting in which we were able to leverage some of the phone banks that had been existing within the health agency and essentially have a method to centralize all grievances that may go there. And of course, we have a particular eye for persons with disabilities and the needs, and making sure that we're creating the most accessible environments that we can. Looking at LAHSA policies and implementations, I'd reference program standards. And so LAHSA manages program standards for all of our funded agencies participating in CES, and these standards are applicable to all program types. So essentially, these program standards would be attached to all program types, in that whether it's interim housing, whether it's permanent housing, whether it's rapid rehousing, this incorporates standards that would be applicable to all. And so LAHSA standards relating to assistance animals focus on creating the most inclusive environment for participants to maximize every opportunity for service delivery, defaulting to the least restrictive criteria for program entrance. So this could operationalize in that you have somebody showing up with an animal at the door and stating that they are, an emotional support animal or anything to that effect. And knowing that some of our folks may not always have the resources to be able to have things, we want our providers to bring folks in. We want to accept them in first, and then we can figure out how we can continue to support maybe some of the documentation around that. But mainly, we don't want to use this as a screening criteria. And we also balance that with supporting of handler responsibilities and those types of things. Within the policy, of course, we're going to have reasonable accommodation and modification aspects to it. We service animal and emotional support animal company handlers would be, where they could take their support animals would include dining and restrooms. And of course, there are handler responsibilities identified, including health and safety, and documentation and executive partnership. And what that means is as we work with folks on reasonable accommodations, knowing that accessibility and really supporting persons with disabilities is so important, that when it comes to a potential denial of an accommodation, we want to make sure that these decisions are being evaluated and looked at from the highest levels of leadership within organizations as we make those evaluations. And so under LAHSA's service animal policy, service animals shall also include emotional support animals unless specifically noted otherwise. So essentially, to try to simplify things, but also to increase the accessibility for the folks to get into our shelters, as it says here, that we're considering emotional support animals to be similar in the sense. So what our policy provides program guidance on, and this is not comprehensive, but I'm pulling out some of the core aspects, would be screening and intake practices, supporting handler responsibilities, ensuring areas of access, relief areas, sanitation, allergies, fear of animals, understanding that, you know, there might be concerns from other participants in relation to this, that we wanted to provide some guidance on that. Program disruptions and problem solving, as Tonja was getting to, on how we really support our folks in trying to create that environment. Vaccinations and licensing. And of course, you're going to see reasonable accommodation modification and our grievance procedures. And so a lot of those policies, you know, we've spent a lot of time on making sure that they all really connect together to have the most comprehensive but consistent amount of information and guidance to be going out. Now, LAHSA provides some program oversight through a few different mechanisms, and starting with ADA self-evaluation plans. So LAHSA does conduct self-evaluation plans with providers, and it essentially is creating a set of requirements and having agencies evaluate how they meet those standards. So through this lens, it would probably be the requirement of policies and procedures for reasonable accommodations, policies and procedures for how you would be accepting and working with folks that have pets or service animals or anything to that effect. And we do that, you know, pretty regularly to try to make sure that our agencies have the support that they need to run their operations in a way that really, again, creates the best environment, access, and experience. So regular operational oversight piece basically is just highlighting that we have a performance management department that not only supports the program design, as Jeff was talking about, but also the performance of those programs. And we're sort of a hub where all of our programs can reach out to us in the event that they have some accommodations that they wanted to run through, or any challenges. And then, of course, the grievances and concerns that might come from our participants are also sort of centralized within our department as well. And like most oversight entities, we have a monitoring department, and really it's more around looking at risk assessments and the evaluation of the operations and the guiding policies and procedures an agency might have that lends towards the most appropriate practice when supporting access for those that have assistance animals. And then again, I've said it a lot and I'll say it again, but again, it's all about how we have connection with our participants and allowing as many methods as possible. Now, we've created a centralized hub to be able to receive these, but LAHSA has multiple methods for folks to be able to reach out to us, to contact us on any program concerns. We have had folks reach out to us around wondering about how they can get access, or you know, they're saying I can't get access, and we would try to jump in there and really provide the support to the participant, but also to the provider as well. And I would lastly share that LAHSA also has a senior ADA coordinator to support agencies with reasonable accommodation plans and troubleshooting. And I would highlight the word troubleshooting there in the event that not every situation looks the same. And so, you know, how do we really take these, excuse me, these principles and these concepts and apply them to what we're seeing right in front of us? And so our senior ADA coordinator has been very instrumental in really supporting us when there are concerns or issues around access or even just ongoing operations when we do have animals in our homeless shelters. So that will wrap up our presentation and our section to be lifted up for the remaining of the agenda.
Thank you all so much for all of this really wonderful organization. Got a few chats saying how amazing your system is. I wish I could just steal you all and bring you to New Jersey. So we have a lot of questions, and we have a little under half an hour for them. So I'm gonna work my way from the bottom up. Tonja, do you have animals in kennels in a specific area, or are animals with their people? And is it different for dormitory parts versus private rooms?
So we have animals are always with their people. They're not in kennels. In our main facility across the street, and I saw in the chat, someone asked how many folks we serve. So in our main facility, we have 623 clients. They are in single or double rooms. When someone, and we do have a few dorms based on certain programs we run, like our winter shelter program, which is a little bit different than our other interim housing programs. But when someone is in that dormed-like setting, if they have a pet, we rearrange things to get them in a single or a double room with an individual that also may have a pet or is all right with pets. If there are two pets in a room that's double, then part of the work we do with our trainers, and our staff have all been trained, is how to get those two dogs. So we're not going to stick you in a room and your dog doesn't like the other dog. Like, we've all had those experiences. But then we also work with the client to help the two of them get along, and so sort of co-parent and care for each other's pets. So they're always together. In our bridge home sites, the reason we have the rather large crates, and they're not cots, they're sort of almost like a modular design where there's a bed and a little light and a dresser and an area for them to keep their belongings. LAHSA has done a really great job in thinking that a bridge home through. And what they've created is, underneath the area where the bedding goes is enough space for the crate to fit so that the dog is with their pet at all times.
Thank you. Jonathan and Jeffrey, can you talk about the range of providers, size, layout, population served, who received the LAHSA animal accommodation grants?
Yeah, we issued the funding to 5 different providers. The Weingart Center was one of them. And then we also issued funds, I'll try to recall, LA Family Housing, Volunteers of America, and Proyecto Pastoral, and I may be missing one that I'm neglecting. But, you know, in terms of the sort of like the diversity of the providers, you know, LA County, we're a county of over 10 million people, the spatial geography about the size of Connecticut. So the 5 providers represent, you know, different, you know, they definitely represent different regions of the county. And the range of providers are also very different in terms of their scope and their mission. So, you know, we have of the providers that I mentioned, you know, some of them are, you know, they're all nonprofits, but some may have operating budgets as much as, you know, $30 million a year in terms of their programming and services. And then on the smallest end, Proyecto Pastoral, they're a program of one of the missions in Los Angeles, and they're a very small 60-bed homeless service program in Boyle Heights that largely serves you know, undocumented persons. And so you know, each of the providers was able to do something a little bit different, but you know, a number of the providers did you know, build out dog parks, dog runs at their facilities with the funds, and I think, you know, each of them, you know, overwhelmingly had really good experiences with, you know, being able to put the funding into practice, and that a lot, you know, basically, like we mentioned, a lot of these program elements have since been scaled and replicated in other settings. So I can try to confirm the last of our grantees, but yeah, five grantees across the county.
Many shelters in Arizona allow service or emotional support animals, but not pets. Do you happen to have any data around the shift or change in amount of animals entering once it is open to everyone? And to build on that question, someone else asked, do you experience a floodgate phenomenon once you start accepting all animals?
So starting with the second question, which was a lot of the concern from some of our providers, my observation and my experience is that we did not necessarily see a floodgate. Maybe there may have been a circumstance where there is a question about, you know, emotional support hour being able to bring folks in and sort of, well, if we allow this, is this going to, you know, create a scenario where we now will have challenges with our operations? So from my perspective, I did not see that it created this, you know, huge floodgate of everybody wanting to bring, you know, all of their animals in. But I'll also refer to Tonja to see if she would have anything to add, given that, you know, she's much closer on the operations based on her experience.
You know, we did not experience a floodgate. I believe when we, prior to going after the RFP, we had something like 18 dogs that were in the building. Once we opened it up, we've kind of averaged around, I want to say 22 to 25. So we haven't seen like just this mass thing. It sort of depends. And being interim housing, people do cycle out. They get permanently housed and new folks go in. But it hasn't been significant. As it relates to other types of pets, we've had actually just two incidents that were brought to my attention. One, a gentleman had an iguana that he wanted to bring in. We worked with him, we met with him, we wanted to ensure that it, had a proper tank that it was going to be in and all of those things, and we chose to allow it. We did have one client who had a very large and rare tarantula, which I am terrified of spiders. It had nothing to do with my opinion, but my thought was like, what the heck? Why would, but in that case, we needed to do a little bit of research because none of us were familiar with that type of animal. And what it turned out to be was the type of spider that he had was not legal and was venomous. And because we did do our due diligence, we did have to say no to that. Other than that, we do have some cats. We have a few guinea pigs. It's really about us working with the client and understanding their needs. And understanding our ability as good stewards of these funds and of our clients, our ability to keep them safe, both the client and the pet. So the tarantula, venomous, a no-go. The guinea pigs and the iguana were fine. And then our case managers are great. They really love this because a lot of them are pet owners themselves. And so they really get into helping the client figure out the best way to care for an iguana. I mean, I kind of had no idea. Now I'm a pretty skilled iguana specialist at this point.
Thank you for that, Tonja. And in relation to the question around the data, do we happen to have any data around the shifts or change in the amount of animals entering once open to all animals? So that's not specific information that I believe that we have, but I do want to highlight that LAHSA's continued work around this is going to be focused on pets. Currently, all of our policies and procedures are more in relation to assistance animals. However, we do encourage, and that's where the policies will be following us, but we have been encouraging our providers to work with people with where they're at, and we can help with supporting that. And I know there were some even earlier presentations within this conference with another provider that we worked with that absolutely, believes in bringing folks in. So I know through our point in time counts, we've started to really try to understand sort of the pet population as well. So we don't necessarily have specific data around that, but I think it also will be driving us more towards policies that are more specific to pets and sort of the requirements and implementations around there, because I do think that's going to be a very important data point to be observing once we, get to that point.
And let's say for continuums of care and the point in time count, are there specific questions you're asking either when doing street outreach or during the point in time count?
I know there are. I'm trying to remember what those questions specifically are, but Jeff, I'm not sure if you remember specifics.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't remember the question sets that are used during our pit count, but I know that there was a recent edition of trying to account for persons with their animals as part of our count.
What added expenses does a shelter need to consider when co-sheltering in order to be successful? Kennels, food, additional insurance, etc.
Tonja, would you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the things I'd say that's an expense that we didn't think of, but we've leveraged funds through our fundraising department to take care of, are the licenses. And so a lot of folks we do require that our pets are registered and they're licensed. We found that a lot of clients came in and didn't have that. And so we've worked with various sources to make sure we put that in all of our program budgets going forward, depending on the program. Flea meds and supplies, although we get a great deal from our partners as this initiative gets bigger and bigger, we're sharing with more and more people. So that's something that you should consider when you are working on this. Kennels are always needed. Toys, things that are good, constructive things for pets to play with. We look at flea meds and supplies. We also book for, and food. Those are the primary things. We want to make sure we have everything. And often clients come to us and they do not have any of the things that I've just mentioned. And we need to provide them. So that's something that we embed in all of our program budgets to LAHSA and other providers.
Great, thank you. Has there been a shift of those unsheltered with pets now that these services have opened up?
I would share that I would say more anecdotally, yes. I think that we were sort of referencing in the previous question a need to be, as we're driving a little more sophistication and how we're looking at that. But what I can say is that, over the past course of, I would say, the last few years, 5 years, working with our senior ADA coordinator, we did have a lot more challenges and concerns with folks that were bringing animals into their shelters. And from that, there's been a lot of development and guidance and those types of things in which, at least from our lens, we've seen more access for folks to be able to get into that. I just don't have any hard concrete numbers. However, my experience has been that, we are seeing more animals within our shelters. We are seeing a lot more of our community-based organizations not looking at it through the lens of, assistance animals, but more about, focusing on the individual or the family and how we can really serve them and looking them sort of as like a whole family.
Yeah, I would add, the Bridge Home Initiative represents a pretty significant expansion of our shelter system, in that with all of those beds being, designed with the intent of being able to accommodate persons with animals. I believe it's about 3,000 shelter beds or so that got created through the Bridge Home Initiative alone. So that represents a pretty significant expansion and opportunity for folks with animals to come indoors.
That's amazing. Tonja, do you have to offer any specialized training to your staff? Do all of your case managers and social workers work with clients regardless of whether they have an animal or not? Or do you have specialized staff that work with those shelter residents that have companion animals?
So we have both. Because we can't make the assumption that every staff member is going to be comfortable with pets. And so we do have folks that work in our program departments that are primarily responsible for, one, making sure that we have an accurate tally of the number of pets in the building, that the basic needs that we've all discussed before, making sure there's a license, that they are spayed or neutered, that they have the medications and food that they need. That's done by a specific team. But then the case managers themselves, unless they state that they're uncomfortable in some way with pets, also work with clients. We have an entire checklist as part of our intake. Once they say that they have a pet, that the case manager goes through with them. And then we do provide ongoing trainings to our staff and our clients about working with pets. That's work that we got as part of the leverage when we applied for the grant. We found that there were a ton of providers, including the LA Animal Shelter. There are folks that are specific to the Skid Row area that are working on that. And I can't remember all the names. I did see someone in the chat ask a bunch of questions. I can provide to this group a list of all of those agencies at the end, because I don't know them all off the top of my head. But there are regular and ongoing trainings, both for the staff and clients, in how to deal with clients and their pets, and specifically dogs that may be difficult or afraid. We often find that a lot of our clients have not adopted their dogs, but found their dogs on the street, have bonded with them. And so it's really important that we both teach the client as well as the staff how to work with dogs that have been unhoused or untrained or feral, cats themselves, so that everyone in a community as large as we're working in feels safe and secure.
That's really great. Someone said the pets adopted the people. I love that. Have you had any pushback on requiring spay neuter? This has definitely been a topic of conversation throughout the entire conference.
You know, I will tell you that I kind of get the day-to-day of everything that's happening in my role. And I have yet to have anyone say that they had a concern with that. What I have found is the clients that come into any of our environments, they really have a love for their pets. They want to do the right thing by them. They want to ensure that they are safe, that they have them for a long time, and there really hasn't been any pushback. What we often hear is, we didn't know, I know they need a license, but I didn't know that I could get one free of charge. I know they need flea medications and they need to be spay or neutered, but I didn't know where to go. So the resources we provide, not just for the clients that are in our buildings, but also to the larger community through our access center. You know, anyone can walk off the street and ask about pet care services, and our team in the access center will get them directed to the place they need to be. So no, we haven't had any pushback. I'm sure there will be at some point, as every day is a new day, and we'll figure out what to do with that when we get there. But at the moment, no, we really haven't.
Great. So, I mean, I'm so impressed by not only the funding for this accommodation and also by Weingart's work. What advice can you give us that are trying to do this from scratch? For example, here in New Jersey, I believe I heard someone say, someone in government say that a support animal, not an emotional, a service animal, is only a dog or a small pony. I don't think we see many small ponies walking around, especially with our homeless folks. But that definition is just so restricted that for those of us that are trying to do it, not only in the shelter system, but also provide support to tenants once they've moved into permanent housing or shared housing, what any advice any and all of you can give us?
You know, I would say Jonathan really hit on a point, and so is Jeff. You can meet people where they are. If the ultimate goal is to help get people off the street and have them stay off the street, you've got to be flexible. I think for the most part, I would assume everybody who's participating in this conference has had a pet in their lives and knows the emotional bond that is so important to the health and well-being of all of us. So I think don't be so restrictive. Understand the value that a pet in whatever dog, cat, et cetera, that brings in a person's life on the road to recovery and being housed, and get creative. You know, as I mentioned in my brief sort of presentation, was so unbelievably impressed with the number of people when we just asked. You know, we needed to move concrete, and what you didn't see, and I wish we had done some before and after photos in our dog park, was there was this large old dead tree stump that was humongous and had been there forever. And when I said to my boss, I want to build a dog park, the first thing he said is like, okay, concrete, moving trees, and he's a dog owner as well. But, you know, from a practical and financial point of view, is like, that is going to be huge. How are we going to do all of that work with $15,000? And when we went to just our local architects who have nothing to do with building dog parks, now they do, but they didn't then. They were, you know, they paid to have the ground excavated. They paid to have the tree removed. They got very creative about, here's this artist that can, you know, put up really gorgeous print paintings of dogs. I'd say don't underestimate the community and the power and love of pets and how people are so willing to do that. I will tell you that we've been around for more than 35 years, and the uptick in donors And individuals that had never heard of the Weingart Center when we opened our dog park was, I would say we increased by 30%. There was a little thing done in the LA Times. We had an opening and we had all of the folks who helped us there. And people just started calling us. Our donors on social media, et cetera, started saying, we want to donate. We had people call us and say, how many dogs do you have? We want to send all of them for a grooming day. And we've done that. Don't be afraid to ask, and you'll be surprised at what you get back.
Yeah, I would add, I think I appreciate that, Tonja. I think the testimonials, the success stories, the positive impacts, like all of those things, in my experience anyway, those do have a lot of value and a lot of weight when you're trying to advocate with your legislators. So, not knowing, let's say the legal landscape in New Jersey, but in California anyway, we have the federal HUD and fair housing and ADA, regulations, but the state has then adopted, state requirements that also help make it so that we can then pass on those reasonable accommodations to allow a larger variety of folks and their animal companions when trying to help make sure that they have equitable access to housing. So if, New Jersey, for example, let's say, there was a need to have some state legislation that helped allow, your person's experiencing homelessness have better access to housing. I think all of those stories and those impacts and those kinds of things from providers, doing the good work and who have been able to get people indoors and the positive outcomes there, that can go a long way in getting some of the legislative changes.
It's just so amazing. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. How do you do with medical emergencies with the animals? Because I know my sister agency operates a warming center during the winter months, and the medical emergencies are a lot to deal with just the humans. So adding that animal element and also knowing how expensive emergency vet care is from personal experience. Are there discretionary funds? How do you handle it? Partnership?
So we've been really very lucky again with the Los Angeles shelters for dogs, with our downtown vets and advocates. They have really, when we've called them when there's been an issue, they've picked up the cost for that. We've really not had to pay for anything. All the trainers that come in, the mobile vet clinics, it's all free of charge. And so we've not had an issue. What we have done that's interesting is when our clients have medical emergencies, what we did in that case, because they'll have to go in a hospital and leave their dog, is one, again, having the dedicated personnel that are there to assist while that client is in the hospital is very important. And 2, we've created buddy systems with clients. So that training and getting them to do socialization is that when we get a call that a client has to go in the hospital, that case manager first activates the buddy to help care for that pet while that individual is in the hospital. And then our staff follow up to make sure it's okay. But as far as medical emergencies, we've had the spade and neutering through the SPCA have come out and they've done that for us free of charge. When there have been medical emergencies, they've covered that cost. And it's a matter of letting all of your veterinarian and dog providers in your community know that that's what you're doing. And then they're usually very willing to help out. We do have a very small discretionary fund for major emergencies if something is really, really crazy that we need to deal with. But I have to tell you, we have not been able to access that. We've not had to access that at all.
Truly amazing. Last question, do you have any breed restrictions? And if you don't, how can we get rid of that negative stigma with some larger breeds, especially with dogs?
From a LAHSA standpoint, we don't have any restrictions on the dog breed. I think that we're going to be in a position we're going to better bolster around that with our policies, but we don't have restrictions. We have had providers reach out, with concerns based off a particular breed, and fear of safety or impact to programs. And we've really just encouraged our providers at that point to really be focusing on the animal that is there, the handler responsibilities, and really trying to take it from a general sense of fear or a general stigma on a particular breed and really trying to hone it more into what's the circumstance now. And regardless of any breed, there's still going to be handler responsibilities that we want to encourage. There's still accommodations that we're hoping our service providers can be doing. So we don't have any restrictions. However, we do recognize that as we move more into our pet policies and try to be a little bit more comprehensive, we'll probably have a little bit more policy and oversight and support in that particular area. But when we do run into these situations, we want people, again, to focus on the person, the situation, and the particular animal that's right in front of them, and focusing on how, as Tonja mentioned, how we can be creative. So we've not been in a position where somebody's come to us and said there's a particular breed, and we've said, yes, that's fine. They don't have to have access. We want to hone people in on the here and now and what the situation is.
I would just add that we do not have a restriction. It is about the dog and the owner. We have had a situation where we've had a dog that became more aggressive, but then that's where you bring in your partners that are trainers that help the client work with the dog. When a client has a pet that they are choosing to not provide or take advantage of the services, our case managers will work with them to maybe mandate that, okay, this is an issue we're seeing happen with your dog over and over again, whether he's snapping at folks. We can't ignore it. It is about the larger community as well. And then we will require them to take part in the training with them and their dogs so they can better learn how to handle them. But there's no restriction on size. I went from a 3-pound Yorkie to a 50-pound giant Schnauzer. So how can someone tell you no?
Amazing. I will share a personal anecdote. During Hurricane Sandy, I had to be evacuated by the National Guard from our apartment because they thought the building was going to collapse. And I had 2 bunnies at the time, and they were like, no, just leave them there. And I just went red and was like, no, I'm not leaving without my 2 bunnies. And then the shelter, the armory where they had us that were displaced there, they're like, you can't bring rabbits in. And, I figured it out, but I had that privilege and that support system to do that. And I just think it's so amazing and inspiring, the work that you have all done from the ground up and from the top down to help these folks that really need a home and have their animals or their family. So I just want to say thank you so much to Jonathan, Jeffrey, and Tonja. Their contact info is on the screen, but you can always reach out to us. At the end of this, we are going to have an evaluation, and we'll have everyone share their information. That way we can all keep in touch. So thank you so much to the 3 of you.